Welcome to Success Unleashed, Beyond the Job Site, the only podcast created to help contractors win in business and in life. And now your host, Gerritt Bake.
Welcome back to the Success Unleashed podcast. Today we've got a special guest, good friend of mine, Adam King. And the reason I wanted to have Adam on the show today is really to share his journey and talk about, the life of an entrepreneur, the life of a contractor. We like to think that it's, all sugar plums and fairies and, flowers everywhere and everybody loves you and everything is awesome, but it's not. And the quicker you can understand that it's not going to be that way, the quicker you can do something about it. And Adam's got a very unique story, his own, but you'll also be able to relate to a lot of the things that he's been through because he's a contractor just like you. Now, a little bit about Adam. He's been, we'll call it in the game for many years, but an entrepreneur, business owner himself for 15 years. He started Bonneville Caulking and Waterproofing. Get your mind out of the gutter. Caulking with an L. But he's been in business for 15 years. Right now, his business does about $2 million a year. And so pay attention to him because he's got a lot of good things to share with you. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Gerritt. Appreciate it.
You got it, man. So let's kind of start at the beginning, right? Everybody starts at a different place, either work for somebody else or they say, hey, I think I can do this better than the other guy. Like what was your journey? How did you get started in caulking and waterproofing? Yeah,
similar story there. I worked for my stepdad. So my parents got divorced or whatever, and my mom, the new guy that she married, actually worked for a caulking and waterproofing company. And upon marrying my mom, he got fired. So he had to come home and be like, hey, I'm going to start my own. So he was kind of like fight or flight mode also when he started. But I was lucky enough to watch his struggles and watch what he did under his business and kind of take mental notes. And I always just assumed that I would take his business over. I worked very hard for him, put in a lot of effort for it. And then when I got a little older and where I thought wise enough to run the office or be in that management side of it, I built up enough courage to go ask him, and he didn't really give me the answer that I wanted. He was like, hey, Adam, you're so good in the field. I'll probably have you be one of my remote guys, move you out to Nevada or move you to Idaho or somewhere to continue growing this thing. And at that point in my life, it just wasn't the answer I wanted to hear. So I went home to my wife and was like, kind of the same thing my dad did 20 years ago. We got to do something for ourselves because this future here, there's no future for me here.
How long were you married when that happened?
About a year, probably. So yeah.
A year married and you're like, well, here we go.
And had an offer on our first home.
Oh.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And back then, I know homes are crazy nowadays, but back then it might as well have been $1 million to us too. It doesn't matter that they're 180 back then or whatever. It was a big venture for us too.
So let me ask you, how long did you work for your father-in-law before you ended up going on your own?
My stepdad, and it was no problem. My stepdad, and it was probably 10 to 11 years at least.
Okay.
So right when I graduated high school, even in high school, I kind of worked with him during my senior year and got some school credit for it. Learned a little bit of the estimating there, and then just went into the field right out of high school with him and just continued on that path.
11 years. I'm not really good at math, but 11 plus 15 is 26.
Correct.
And if you're a contractor, I want you to see this, right? It's really easy to say, hey, look, I drive a nice car. I live in a nice house. I have a very lucrative and financially successful business. But 26 years of laying the foundation to get to where you're at today.
Correct.
Right? Talk about that. I mean, you literally worked for your stepdad for 11 years, and then you're like, hey, I want to run the show. And he says, hey, that's cute, but no. And you're like, well, here we go. Right. So talk about that like first year. What was that transition like stepping out on your own?
Very, 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 very scary, to be honest. Like I didn't have the confidence in myself that I needed, that I have now. And so it was that first transition was scary. Not only that, my family functions were now weird because now I'm competing with my stepdad and things on that level. But yeah, it was very, very tough. And I knew the trade, but I didn't understand the management and the business side of it. And that's where I kind of got my butt handed to me a few times, for lack of a better word, is I went in there with a sense of arrogance that I was one of the better caulkers in the state, but I didn't know how to bid work or look at drawings, look at details, the things that actually mattered to running a successful company and getting there. So I kind of got tossed to the wolves at that aspect, but I had some good people that believed in me too, Gerritt. I had people early on that I had set the foundation, maybe chirped in their ear while I was still working for my old company and said, hey, I'm thinking about going out on my own. If I did, you know how I run your jobs, you know how I do things. Would you guys take a chance in me? And I kept hearing yes. Like, honestly, they kept saying yes, yes, yes. But then what I learned is it's hard to connect those dots also. Even though they're saying yes as a superintendent or a project manager, how do I get on the list from the general contractor? How do I let them now know, here's my license information, here's my bond rate, here's all my things that I needed to let them now know that I do. So there was a little bit of a learning curve, learning how to pipe that into the correct people.
I want to back up a little bit. You talked about this briefly, and I think you almost skimmed over it. Self-confidence.
Yeah.
It's such an important part of running a business.
It really is.
Right? Because people don't realize this, like there's an aura around you, right?
Correct.
You are sharing with the people around you what you are at that particular moment, right? Whether you're sad, you're happy, you're depressed, you're angry, you're lacking in confidence, you're super confident, you're sharing that, right? And so what was that like for you going in and not having that self-confidence of understanding how to bid jobs, understanding who you needed to talk to, understanding what type of insurance you needed and things like that? What was that process like for you as far as building that self-confidence?
A lot of trial and error, and then learning that they're kind of people too. Like I would always put these fake things on people, thinking they were better than me or thinking that they were smarter than I was or smarter than my team or knew more than us, when in reality, and I've told you this story, I called up one of the estimators for one of these big companies one time, asking them how they were dictating where the below grade waterproofing was. And he says, Adam, that's why we call it an estimate. And like a light bulb went off, like, holy cow, these guys don't really know either. They're kind of just relying on everyone else's knowledge too. So why not? I dropped the fear of asking questions. That was a big one for me, is I dropped the fear of asking questions. And my grandpa was a good mentor, and he says, Adam, there's no such thing as a dumb question. And that has just resonated with me so long. So now I have the confidence that if I need to ask a question or I'm not certain about a certain thing, I ask the question. So confidence. And now at 15 years on my own, I don't go in overconfident, but I let them know we're a professional. We know what we're talking about, and you would be a mistake not to partner with us pretty much when we leave.
Wow. That's so interesting, because you go from the state of like not having confidence, from a lack of confidence to actually I'm supremely confident. But here's the key is you're supremely confident in what you know. Correct. And what you do. Correct. Right? Because we've talked about this. Anything outside of your scope of work, it's not that you couldn't do it, but what happens to the confidence level, exactly. Right? Whether it's roofing or it's concrete or anything else, it goes away, not because you couldn't figure it out, because you could, you're a problem solver, right. But you don't have the experience. And because you don't have the experience, you don't have the confidence.
Correct. So
talk about that for a minute. Like, how long did it take for you to start to build up that combination of confidence and experience where you could walk in to an estimator or a project manager or even a GC, look them in the eye, shake their hand and say, I'm your guy?
Yeah, great question. So probably about 2 years after. So I had some good connections that I had made with my previous employer, and it was one of them was a mason guy, a smaller mason company out of Southern Utah, and I kind of just stayed in contact with him, and he's like, as soon as you go out on your own, let me know. So I let him know. He gave us a small job up in Salt Lake, and that's how I learned how to kind of do the invoicing, do the things like that. And just with each job, it seemed that we closed, Gerritt, I gained more and more confidence. Each trial or tribulation that came our way, and we survived, we were like, holy cow, we've got this figured out. Like, it just seemed, and gosh dang, the universe does throw things your way. It does try you, and it pulls at you and tries to get you to do things. But if you just stay true to your message and you stay true to what you are, that confidence will come, and these people will see it. Like you said, it's an aura that you carry with you, and people want to help you succeed, believe it or not, and they will help you build that confidence. Even if you don't have it in yourself, they'll say, hey, hire this guy, or this so-and-so would want to come work for you. And then so you pull that member on your team, and also team members have now given me the confidence that I need. I've hired an amazing team, and they, from our estimating team to our guys out in the field doing it, every one of them give me more confidence every day too. And they to tackle these bigger jobs. And then we get one of these thresholds under us, like let's say $100,000 contract that you complete. That gives you a sense of confidence, like, hey, maybe I can chase the $500,000 or the one, and then you get a few of those under your belt, and then it's just a snowball effect, to be honest. Just like riding a bike or learning how to fish or anything. The more you do it, the more time in the saddle, the more confident you're going to be, and the better at it you are. And more people are going to see it too, and they're going to want to align with your success and your beliefs and try to get you going. So
it brings me back to the old saying, success leaves clues, right? And success at its purest form is the ability to pass through failure quicker than everyone else.
Correct.
Like that's what success is. And it's not that you didn't have your shortcomings, your struggles, and your failures as you were growing your business. It's that you were willing to go through it faster than other people to obtain that success, right? People think, and you've probably seen the meme online, that success is this, slowly growing, gradual slope.
Right.
And success is like up, down, left, right. You get buried, you come back up, now you're in the water, and you're like, oh, somehow I ended up here. No, It wasn't the somehow. You had to go through all of those things to get to where you're at.
I agree. I totally agree.
So for you, when was it? So 15 years now you've been in business. So when was it where you started to feel confident as like this, not only can I do the work, but I can manage this business and I can grow this to provide the lifestyle that I want to live?
Probably about 7 to 8 years in, to be honest with you. I had some failures in hiring people and building teams, and looking back, I took too much pride in firing people because I did all the hiring at that point. And so I was like, oh, I don't want to let this guy go because that's a reflection on me, more or less. And so I had failed a few in the early years in building the correct teams. Not until about 7 or 8 years being in business that I've started to align the right people in the right positions and get some confidence with our team that we really felt like I made the right choice and I've got this. About 3 years into it, I had my wife quit her job. I came to her and I had enough confidence then that, and even my father-in-law, her dad was like, you're a crazy son of a gun. Like she needs to stay working and you're not thinking ahead. And at the time I was like, she would be more helpful to me as a partner in this and grow. And I'm so thankful I did and that was another confidence booster too. About 3 years and then 6 years before 7 years before I really was like, we made good choices. I didn't really worry about failing anymore and just kind of off to the races. The first years prior to that, there was a lot of thoughts of failure. There was not a lot, but it entered my mind, I think, 2 times in my career. Candace and I were kind of talking about that on the way over, but I think 2 times in my career, I came home and was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I maybe have made a mistake with my family, led them down this path, but I'm forever grateful that I did not give up. Like, do not give up because someone will throw you a bone. Someone will believe in you. Just keep calling that circle that you have and just say, hey, I'm trying to drum up work. I'm trying to do this. And that's another sense of confidence. Like you will learn how to build that work and backlog that work and build that network of backlogged work. And then that gives you like money in the bank down the road. So I don't got to really bid this job so low right now because I know I've got this one down the road and I can be kind of a little more aggressive or try to build a little more foundation so I can hire that better team member or hire that better person. We put a lot back into the business too, a lot back into the equipment that we use, the not really marketing and stuff, but just the tools that our guys use, and like jerseys. We have team members like, we all wear matching shirts and uniforms on site, like things like that, just to make us look like a part of a team and a success. And believe it or not, as you know, success leaves clues. And I watch these other big contractors and they're all matching and I just try to mimic what they're doing more or less. and it's worked.
I like that. I want to go back to something you mentioned about, hiring, and really you focused on hiring, but it has to do with running a business in general. Okay. And there's a statement that says you can't justify emotional decisions with facts.
It's a great
statement. You can't, right? Because an emotional decision is usually an illogical decision, right?
Correct.
Which means you're normally going to keep somebody longer than you should keep them, or you're going to invest in something that you shouldn't invest in, or you're going to get in over your skis on a job because you just want to make a good impression, even though you know you're going to lose your shorts, right? And so it's learning to differentiate between the two, between emotional decisions and factual based decisions. How long did it take for you to kind of switch from making those emotional decisions to like, hey, you know what? On my bids, on my employees, on my computer systems, like how long did it take for you to say, you know what? I'm going to make decisions based on facts?
Great question. Probably about that same time, like the 5 to 7 year, like right around that 5 to 7 year, Gerritt, is when we kind of started saying, all right, I needed to withdraw myself from the accounts receivable, the accounts payable, because I was calling up too emotional to try to get paid because I knew my mortgage was due or I knew some of these things were due. So that's a great question. And I noticed once I stopped making emotional decisions and emotional phone calls, it allowed us to grow too, believe it or not. Answer to your question, about 5 years in, I started putting people in place that could make those emotional decisions for me without me being involved in it.
Once I stopped making emotional decisions, that's when the business started to grow.
It really did.
That is so good. So good, man. Like, think about this. You went through 5 to 7 years, right? Ish of going through and experiencing business, the grind, as we like to call it, before you finally were like, hey, you know what? Like, if I just do this one thing, how much different will the business in my life be? That one decision.
A great decision we made because it's been incredible ever since. And yeah, it's been great. It's been great.
And here's the crazy part. Obviously with my background being a police officer, where I started, it was about 5 to 7 years before I felt super confident and comfortable dealing with whatever came my way, right? Because at that point, funny you mentioned that, it was the same for me, as I took the emotion out of it, right? You watch TV and you watch a cop in a car chase, you're like super excited. You're getting all pumped up. You're like, oh, that'd be so cool. Oh, wait, he just pulled his gun out. Oh, crap, and all these things are happening. Right. And that's what it was for me in that moment. So I made some pretty stupid decisions. That's a different conversation for another time.
Yep.
But it wasn't until I started to take the emotion out of it and just understand, listen, business and life is about setting yourself up for success. Correct. And that's systems, that's processes, that's people, that's going back and double checking and doing all of these things, checks and balances. That's what leads to success, right? It's not like showing up because you just downed a monster energy and you're like, let's go. And it lasts, 30 minutes and then you're crashed out. No, that's not what it's about.
It's not.
How am I setting myself up for success?
Yep. And consistency too. Even more than that little burst of energy, consistency pays huge too, from what I've experienced. Consistency in pays big, not this show up guy, and critical thinking. You touched on that a little bit too, Gary. Most successful people that I know too are very good critical thinkers. They're very good problem solvers. They communicate quickly, things like that too. And it took us, those 5 to 7 years to learn those kind of traits and learn those kind of skills, and then be keen enough and smart enough to apply them and use them. This is the world before there was these awesome podcasts with all the information and stuff. And so I kind of had to just take a crash course and learn, but I'm so thankful for the way that I did too.
Yeah, that's so important.
Yeah.
It's interesting you talk about decision-making, and I actually want to talk about that right now because there's some interesting decisions for you right in front of your business. And we'll talk more in detail about those. But you brought up this point about decision-making, and there's a rule that I learned a few years ago, and it's the 1-3-1 rule. Okay. Number one is identify the problem. Like, what's the root cause of the problem, right? You may have jobs that are behind schedule. You may have, trucks that are dirty and whatever, but the root cause could be employee X, right? John, for example. But the first thing you got to do is discover, like, what's the root cause of the problem.
Correct.
It's like going to the doctor. You're not going to go in and say, hey, my knee hurts. And then he's like, here, here's a candy and let me check your left ear. Check on your left ear. Right. So we got to find the root of the problem. The second thing is, as a business owner, if you can take time to identify 3 possible solutions, right? Which forces you to think outside the box a little bit, because most of the time we're like, oh, problem, solution, which isn't always the case.
Correct.
So if you can come up with 3 options, now you look at the one problem, 3 possible solutions, and you say, okay, of those 3, which one is the best one?
Yep.
And then you go execute on it.
Yep. And I've got a similar story about that. We were craning one of our kettles up onto a big building downtown Salt Lake. The crane company didn't use my pick points, and they just ran straps under it. Well, upon lifting it, the hose burst, it sprayed, like 150 gallons of hydraulic fluid, and then it goes down the SWIP system. Well, I call the GC in a panic. And he says, Adam, he's like, I love you because you called me with 3 solutions. You didn't call me with a problem with no solutions. You called me with a problem with 3 solutions, and that resonates and this sits so high with us. And I was like, and then I just started figuring things out, like almost like you said, don't call them with more problems. These guys already got a ton of problems. Call them with solutions, and all of a sudden they'll start using you as a key member of their team because you're bringing solutions to the table, not problems. And yeah, that was huge. That was a big learning lesson and it was a big contractor, and I was so scared to call him, but I'm so thankful that I did, and then I didn't even have no repercussions came from it because we handled it in the house and did what we said we were going to do. Then where they could have fined my butt off and all sorts of things and thrown the book at me. And I was a little nervous of that, but he's like, no, there's none of that because you handled it and you didn't cause any more problems for us. You did it and made it go away. So Nice learning lesson there. That was a great learning lesson.
Yeah.
And then, those 3 solutions, you're exactly right. If you guys in your growth and in your stuff can identify problems and then have solution 1, solution 2, solution 3, and then actually know how to do those solutions, not just bring them to the table, have ways to execute them. And I think it'll go very long way with people.
That's powerful. I love that. Let's talk more about your business in particular. What has been the biggest struggle you've ever had in your 15 years of running your business? Biggest struggle? Another
great question. Biggest struggle that I've had, I would say, was early on. It was honestly building the correct team members. It wasn't finding, maybe early on there was some struggle with knowing how to turn up the work. But as soon as I found identified my problem and then found solutions to the problems, I was able to execute work, and it was more work then. And now I needed to build a team behind it. But I would say my biggest trial for me has been building a good team. I have an amazing team now, and they are the reason that the last few years we've been able to double up again, but for the first 10 years it was building the team, Gerritt.
Wow.
But because I always thought that people thought the way that we think. And I quickly learned that there's worker bees, there's queen bees, and then there's just the soldier bees, and not, you can't make every worker bee want to be a soldier or a queen bee or the leaders, and so I just needed to identify guys that would be good leaders to my field people and then have worker bees under them and just keep a cycle of them going. And it's been a good for us. But I would say that was it. It wasn't really trying to find work or get work, because we were leaving a good reputation on the kind of work we did. So it was easy for us. Word of mouth, as you know, is powerful. Even though on these big contracted bids, word of mouth still powerful and stuff. And so that was easy for us to kind of get that work, but it was building that team, I would say. So
love it.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the work itself. Okay. It's 2024, right? Technology is all over the place. AI this, AI that. In fact, somebody pitched me the other day. They're like, hey, if you just record about 5 minutes, we'll have your voice, and then we can just clone you, and you can. I'm like, that's crazy. So it's this weird, what's real and what's not real, right? But it's 2024, right? And you're continuing to grow your business.
Yep.
Of all the methods that are out there, which one are you doubling down on?
Networking, to be honest. I'm doubling down on networking and getting my message out to people that don't still know. As 15-year contractor in this valley, people still don't know what we do. And so I'm trying to get that message to them, to let them know that we do expansion joints, air barrier, caulking, and waterproofing, and things like that. So yeah, that's been my biggest challenge for myself. It was one of my goals that I set at the beginning of the year, was to double up our network, double up who we know, double up everything, and just try to continue that every year too. But yeah, it's great.
I like it. Now, I know kind of what you're talking about with networking, but let's dive a little deeper into that, right? Because there's a few different ways you can network.
For sure.
But you're talking about the old school, face-to-face, knee to knee, stare you in the eyes.
Correct. And my mom actually is a great sales lady. She sells medical supplies, and I take pages from her. So my stepdad that I worked for wasn't a good salesman, and that's why his company has kind of stayed the way it stayed for 25 years. He's a great caulker and great waterproofer and things, but he's not able to grow. He kind of stays handcuffed for whatever reasons. But my mom, on the other hand, is a great sales lady. So I would take lessons out of her book, send crumble cookies, things like that, little old school, and then go put a face to the name. Hey, we sent those cookies on Monday. We're at them with Bonneville Caulking. Would you guys happen to be able to go to a lunch anywhere this week? And most of the time, a few people in the office here have free lunch, and they come running down and want to go. So it's kind of easy to get in there. And then from there, Gerritt, I try to listen to the conversations and identify who's the estimators, who's the project managers, and kind of elbow up next to them and just say, hey, and we have cards that explain everything we do, like little flyers. And so we'll take those out and hand those out on the luncheons and stuff. And, golfing, we're a big believer in golfing and fishing and just old school techniques. Like you said, even though it's 2024 with all this digital stuff, I have no digital marketing. I have nothing like that at all. And we stay as busy as we want to stay. I don't spend a dollar on marketing outside of lunches and things like that. So.
I love it. Now, again, if you're watching this or you're listening to this, pay attention to what he's saying, okay? The growth of a business has little to do with what you know. It has everything to do with who you know. And the best way to get to know people, especially as a contractor, is not on Facebook. Now, can you get some jobs on Facebook? Sure, right? Because there's a lot of people on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, whatever you're doing. But I'm going to tell you, if you legitimately want to grow a sustainable business, long-term growth, you have to get in front of people. Yep. That's the only way to do it.
Yep.
Okay. Maybe a little bit of a challenging question.
No.
Biggest, what would the moment be called? The biggest, I think we might not make it moment.
Yes. That's a great question too. And that would have to have been, so I got a little confidence under my belt. I'm bidding some bigger projects, and it's actually with the contractor that I've worked with for years and years and years. So I had confidence with them too. I had total confidence going under this larger contract. We get into it, and for whatever reason, the owner and the general contractor disagree on a bunch of things, and the project goes sideways, for better or less of the term. I owed about $400,000, I believe, at the time to people, employees, supply houses, whatever. And I was counting on getting paid. I had some funds from other jobs that we had done, but that depleted quickly and still owed about 200 and something after. Anyways, I went home to Candace and was pretty much like, we're going to have to put our house up. I'm going to have to get a second on the home. Something's going to have to change. And my other mistake, Gerritt, was I didn't have any other work outside of that one particular company. I had so much confidence in that company that I was, at that particular time, 5 of my jobs going were all with this one company. And that was a big, big mistake that I'll never do again. Now we're 2020 instead of, 2020 instead of 80, 90 in one basket and 10 or 5 in another basket. And what we learned from that is, if contractor A goes upside down or sideways or upsets the owner or the bank or something like that, you cannot get paid. All your money can be tied up. But at least if B, C, and D are paying you, you can have some money be coming in instead of waiting on this big thing. So that was the big detrimental, like, oh my gosh, I've put my family and people I care about at risk. But a lot of people would have gave up, Gerritt. And then right after that was COVID. And so it was like a worse timing, but we just managed to, the people that we'd worked with and met, we managed to get on terms with them. We proved that we were going to work through it. We weren't just going to throw in the towel and let these people win. We were like, hey, we know what we owe you. We're willing to work through it. Accountability. I was accountable for everything too, and that went a long way with people. Instead of being like, oh, I got screwed and playing the victim, I was like, no, we put that on that job. I'm sorry we didn't get paid. We'll figure it out. And that was a big deal. And it didn't sit good with my wife, to be like, it, you know, because didn't have extra money at times or to give things away, but I knew it was what we had to do. And not saying that my wife was against it. We just didn't have extra, is all I'm trying to give. But we knew we needed to make it right, and she supported it, and we made it right. And as you know, that turned out to be one of the biggest blessings too. So it was detrimental, looked bleak for like 8-9 months. And then a new general came, owner got a bunch of money and turned that job right around. And it turned out to be one of the biggest blessings we ever had. I mean, I would have never thought I would say that, because at the time I was like, oh my goodness, I wanted to just bury my head in the sand in Bonneville, and just be done. But yeah, that was a bad time. It was a bad time.
And thank you for sharing that. And there's a couple things that you talked about. The first one that I really liked was ownership, right? Like that's what comes with being the owner of your business.
Yes.
Like, who are you going to blame? There is no one to blame.
It would have been very easy for me to blame my employees or blame them. But in the reality, I was the one that took the job. They were just going where I told them. The supply house didn't have any skin in it. They're just selling me products that I tell them to sell them. So you're exactly right. I had to stand up and kind of take the accountability for it, even though it wasn't the most comfortable thing to do. But believe it or not, that came with confidence too.
It's never the easy thing, but it's always the right thing.
Exactly, too. And I want to touch on that. Like contractors, we get a bad name for whatever reason as the ripoff. But I'm telling you, if you guys can set yourself apart as a guy that does good, honest work, clean work, you're accountable, the rest will come. Like that's all Bonneville. I've told you this before. Those are kind of our core values is we'll show up, we'll do what you need us to do. We'll be there when we say we're going to be there, and we'll be like fair priced. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Rinse and repeat.
Rinse and repeat 100 times. As many as you can.
Okay. There's newer contractors out there that want to get into the commercial space.
Yes.
They have no clue.
Yep.
So break it down into just a couple of real simple steps that like, if I'm listening or I'm watching this and I want to get into commercial work, this is what I should do.
Yeah. You're a great asset. To be honest, not to fluff anyone's feather or anything, but Gerritt's a great asset. And then also, if I was doing it again, I would go start networking with those people that make the decisions for the CERC, for the big GCs that you want to work with. I'm not going to name drop any, but you guys know who they are that you want to work with. And go get in front of them. It's not the phone book now, but use Google. Google where their office is. Go up to the office, talk to the little secretary, tell her who you are, what your intentions are, be very clear in your message, and she'll put you where you need to be. And if they blow you off, sometimes they do. I got blown off a lot. I mean, I have a story. I hauled a bunch of donuts down to St. George for an appointment, and the guy didn't show up, but I didn't give up. I just made it awkward for him. I just kind of sat in the lobby with the donuts and was like, they're going to come. And eventually he did come, because I drove 4 hours and I didn't have the gas at that time to put gas in my truck and drive down there and waste it. Like I needed something to come out of that. And that was the only contact I had made. But yeah, just make sure you're getting in front of the right people. And from my stance, the right people are the project managers and the estimators. The superintendents have a lot of pull, the guys in the field, and from what I've learned is they grade us after every job. They'll pull in their superintendents and their field people and say, hey, was BCW what they said they were going to do? Grade them on an A, B, C, D kind of scale, and we get graded on every job, and so that carries a lot of weight into the next project too. So, but yeah, circling back to your question, try to find out who those key players are and get your message to them.
Okay, so that's the good place to start. Yep. Now, you mentioned if they don't know who they are, to Google them.
Yep.
Which is good.
Yep.
Now, what if they didn't know anybody, were in the process of that, but then they also wanted to start bidding on projects? Like, how would they go about doing that?
So yeah, if you didn't know anyone or whatever, it's the same thing. Like I would just, back in the day, there was plan room. So back when I started, there was a Mountain Lands plan room. And so I got a membership at the plan room because I knew that was where all the work was going to come. And in fact, I called one of the GCs because there was a school down in Richfield bidding at the time. And I didn't have my license yet, but I wanted to be bidding. And we had insurance, but we didn't have our license because it took a while up at the state to deal. But the GC said, yes, we will take a bid from you, even though your license processing up there. So that was kind of like an aha. I'm like, holy cow, these guys are kind of hungry for bids. Like if they're willing to take my bid without a license, like they want bids, but, yeah, I would honestly, kind of a cheat code would be call up and ask for the project managers and estimators for whatever contractor you want to work with. And that will put you, boom, you'll bypass a lot of headache and stuff. And then ask them, hey, can I get on your bid list? Or like Gerritt, if you remember at your workshop the other night, we went through that project that we got estimated and we found out who the architect was. So if you can find out who the architect is on the Jiffy Lube that they're building in Spanish Fork, you can call that architect and find out who the general contractors are that are bidding it. And then that gives you more exposure with your number, because now you're not just getting it with the general contractor that's sending you the invite. You're actually getting, and that's how we learn to grow too, like that. But
well, yeah, no, I'll break it down. You gave a lot of information. So there's platforms online where you can find jobs to bid for, right? And then based on what type of a subcontractor you are, then you'll have, specific scope of work that you'll bid.
Yes.
But inside of that, when you do get the plans, that is the cheat code, meaning that if I'm a developer developing a project like a Jiffy Lube or a Starbucks or whatever, I'm looking for the best price, meaning that I'm going to have multiple general contractors submit a bid to me. So each of those general contractors are going to have their subs who are going to bid their portion. They're going to put it all together and they're going to submit their bid. Higher likelihood of you getting the job is by bidding with multiple general contractors. Okay. So this is what Adam's talking about. Now, again, just to simplify it for you. Okay. Step one is get your face and name out there, right? Leverage technology, Google, whatever, but you're going to have to get in front of people. Okay. Take them donuts, take them swag, take them to lunch, take them to coffee, whatever. Okay. Start to build those relationships. Once you've established those relationships, now you're asking for opportunities to get on a bid list. You're getting opportunities to bid on jobs, right? Now, I know this because we've talked before, but one of the other things, and I'll have Adam talk about it here in a second. One of the other things is these estimators, these project managers, these general contractors, they're people just like you, and they want you to win as well. Correct. Right? And so there's nothing wrong with asking them a question. Hey, I don't know how to bid this, or, hey, what are you looking for here? Or things like that. And I actually want you to share, because you shared a story with me about that. Like, what was that like, overcoming that fear of like, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do here. Can I ask them? Can I not ask them?
Right. Great question. And I have a similar story about that I just heard yesterday too. But getting back to your question, yeah. So it goes back to that little tidbit about my grandpa. There's no such thing as a dumb question, but it takes confidence to be able to let someone know that you may not know what you're doing, even though you've been hired as the professional or hired as whatever. So, and that was more just getting comfortable with the field people, and then knowing who I am, that they're not going to use it against me, right? If I go to that person with a question and ask them that, hey, this person's not going to run up to his higher up and be like, why the heck did we hire this guy, and try to get me thrown off. So one is identifying the person that you could ask that question, and then actually asking the question, being humble enough to go up there and say, hey, I may be seeing this a little different. Could you tell me what your team's seeing or what you guys are seeing? That's typically how I lead with any discrepancies that we may have in something, Gerritt. I'm like, hey, me and my team are seeing this like this, and they're answering the question for me without even knowing they're answering the question. It's kind of not like trying to be trickery with them, but I just propose the question in a way that they may not know it's a question. And then if that doesn't work, I'll drop all the fuzziness off it and say, hey, what are you seeing here? And just get down to brass tacks and ask that question. And I try not to ever assume anything. I know, like, assumption, like, we all know what assumptions make of us, but I try to just be very detailed, because that'll burn you. If you try to assume what the architect's seeing on a job, or you're trying to assume what these details may be, that'll kill you. So make sure that you ask those questions, especially on bid day. They set aside blocks of time for us to get our questions in. Like, they'll send me an email a day before bid day and say, hey, after today's day, no more questions. But they set aside blocks of time for everyone to get their questions in, And if you're finding that they're not answering your questions, get a little louder with them. Maybe send the next one in all caps or something, something to stand out, or, just try to make yourself stand out is all I've tried to do. And whether that's through my character or our work mainly, but like, character has a lot to do with it too.
Yeah.
But, but those questions. But so getting back to the story that I had, one of my friends in Denver he's a fabricator, and he's been wanting to get into the commercial construction world forever. One of the guys that worked with me, he was actually one of the higher ups on that job that went sideways downtown that I'm talking about. He started his own company. Well, they're contracted now through one of the big companies in Salt Lake to do a bunch of work on the LDS temple up in Salt Lake. my friend from Denver is now looking at doing all the insulation, acoustical pipe covers. And the guy that went from the big company, I hope everyone's following me here. He was like banging his head against the wall because he didn't know a subcontractor to do this insulation stuff. My buddy from Denver called him asking him if he could bid on handrails, but mentioned in the phone call, hey, we do insulation covers and da-da-da. The guy called him like 2 minutes later, says, you need to get out here to Salt Lake and get me a price on this. I like, there, it's a pretty much come here and we'll do a T&M or whatever. And so now my buddy's on his way over here and it's just amazing, like asking those questions, And Kyle, when he had Jason's attention on the phone, asked the question, do you have anyone doing your insulation? And little did he know that the guy's been stressing out about it for the last year because he told a big GC that he had everything covered and he really didn't. And now, it's just kind of amazing when you put it out there and you ask those questions. So my advice to you guys is if you're calling these guys and you actually have one of them on the phone, ask the question that you want to ask them. Ask them how the best way to get a bid in front of them. Ask them whatever you want to know. Ask them, and they'll answer you. So,
that's so powerful. Because think about this: why do they want to do work with you? Is it because of your name? Is it because of your logo? Is it because you might look, sexier than the other guy? Who knows? Maybe, but probably not. They want to work with you because you can provide a solution to a problem. That's it. Period. Okay. So understand what they're looking for is win-win situations, right? How do you help me win so that I can then help you win? Mm-hmm. Okay. So the better you get at understanding that that's really what they're after, the higher likelihood of you being able to close a job.
Yep.
Now, I want to ask you, kind of a question as we wrap up here. You got $1,000. You're starting over. $1,000. What are you doing?
Oh, that's a great question too.
By the way, you don't have any of your existing relationships?
Yeah, no relationships.
Nothing.
Nothing.
You're at zero. I'm dropping you in Denver, Colorado.
Yeah, like
with $1,000.
Like an undercover.
Right. But we're not worried about the room and board and cars or anything. But you got $1,000 for your business. Yeah. Starting over. What are you doing?
Great question. I'm taking some guys to lunch. I'm identifying, I'm going to maybe a chamber of commerce meeting, something like that, identifying who the key players are. And I'm taking those guys to a lunch and then right in from there. Maybe spend a couple bucks on getting a decent shirt or whatever, and then taking those guys to lunch, honestly, would be like you guys, I can't even tell you the money I've invested on a golf course or luncheons or something has come back 1,000,000x. I mean, it's huge. So that's what I would do with that. And then whatever I had left, I would try to put that towards our first job and off to the races.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Think about this. If you just heard that, like, don't make the game more complicated than it needs to be. Right? The game can be as complicated as you want it to be, right? Mm-hmm. You can worry about Facebook ads. You can worry about websites. You can worry about what logos and t-shirts and what your truck looks like, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you heard Adam here. He's built a $2 million a year business and it's continuing to grow because he invested in relationships. That's it. So relationships is the name of the game.
That's, for us, it's been the name of the game, Gerritt.
Beautiful, beautiful. I do want to ask you, where'd you get your shirt?
Oh, Shields, I believe. Yeah, Shields. I have some
Shields has
Shields.
Those kind of shirts.
Yeah. I had the other one. It had flamingos and machine guns, but I was like,
I got that one.
Do you? The pink one?
No, mine's blue.
Oh, I have a
blue, pink flamingos and machine guns.
Yeah, they're sweet. So I was telling Candace, there's a Pelican one with the chopper. Have you seen that?
Yep.
Yeah, I want the Pelican chopper one. So if you have it, hit me up and we'll get it.
Love it. Appreciate you being here, Adam.
Appreciate you,
spending time with us. Again, if you're a contractor and you're not sure where to start, literally pick up the phone, go have a conversation with somebody and take it from there. All right. That's all we got for you guys. You know what time it is. It's time for you to get after it. 3, 2, 1, off you go. Thanks for listening to the Success Unleashed podcast. Before we go, show some love for your favorite podcast by liking, subscribing, and leaving us a review. Until we see you again, it's time to get after it. 3, 2, 1, off you go.